Keeneland Racecourse in Lexington, Kentucky, this is Eastern Standard. I'm Keith Neisler. For 75 years, horse breeders, trainers, jockeys, and fans have gathered at Keeneland to witness some of the best racing in the world. To mark this occasion, we broadcast on this, the first day of the spring meet, from Keeneland. Kentucky's horse racing industry faces numerous challenges. Casinos in neighboring states have cut into attendance. In search of bigger purses, top horses, jockeys, and trainers have left the Commonwealth, and breeders from places like Florida and California are increasingly competitive. With us to discuss these challenges and some possible solutions are the presidents of Keeneland, Turfway, and Churchill Downs. You can also share your comments and ask questions via email at easternstandard@gmail.com and on Twitter at 889 WEKU. Also, we speak with a pair of leading turf riders about the spring racing season, which of course climaxes next month with the Kentucky Derby. From the Keeneland Racecourse in Lexington, Kentucky, this is Eastern Standard. I'm Keith Neisler. Good afternoon. Keeneland Racetrack this afternoon begins its annual spring meet. It's the beginning of an important year for the Central Kentucky institution, which this year celebrates its 75th anniversary. To mark the occasion, we come to you from this historic racetrack today. Later this hour, the presidents of Kentucky's three leading tracks, Churchill Downs, Turfway, and, of course, Keeneland, will join us. But first, we wanted to discuss the horse industry with a pair of turf riders who are very familiar with Keeneland. Tom Lamara is a writer with the Blood Horse magazine, which serves much of the nation's horse industry, and Alicia Hughes covers racing for the Lexington Herald Leader newspaper. Tom and Alicia, welcome to Keeneland and Eastern Standard.
Thanks very much, Keith.
First off, could you two give us a preview of the Keeneland spring meet? You know, give an idea of the horses, the jockeys, and trainers, and who we should be watching in this spring meet. Alicia?
I mean, I think we're going to see something right off the bat today with the Transylvania Stakes. We've got a horse in Pluck who won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf last season, so we kind of start off the meet on a good note with the Breeders' Cup winner. And even looking ahead to the Ashland tomorrow, which has, been a very good prep for the Kentucky Oaks. It's produced some Oaks winners, and I think a few years ago, Proud Spell ran third in the race, went on to win the Oaks. Last year, a horse named Evening Jewel won the Ashland. She went on to get beat in the Oaks by the slimmest of noses. And we've got some very good fillies running this weekend. And Cathman Blue, who comes in with a 3-race win streak and is a graded stakes winner. And another good filly in Dancing in Her Dreams, trained by John Ward, who himself has trained a Derby winner in the past and owned by John Oxley. And I said there's a number of intriguing horses, even looking at the Bluegrass Stakes, and a horse like Santiva, who won the Kentucky Jockey Club Stakes at Churchill last fall. He's going to be having his final prep there in that race too. And even a horse like Kinsale King, who won the very big sprint race in Dubai last season, he's slated to run in the Shakertown, I believe, and he's got one of the great trainers and personalities in the game in Carl O'Callahan. So I think we've got a good meet on tap here.
Tom, anything else that you're looking for different from Alicia?
She covered a lot of it there, but one thing about the Keeneland meet is this: it's only 3 weeks long. And you really need to watch the races every day because of the maiden races. There's a race here tomorrow that's on the turf. It's not a stakes, but there's multiple stakes winners in the race. It's that kind of meet where you can find some real quality every day. And, you kind of write down notes and use it accordingly at Churchill and Saratoga and the other tracks when this place closes.
What about trainers and owners? Do we have any that are specific who've done well here at Keeneland, as opposed to other tracks? I'm just asking out because you've mentioned so many different horses that are to look out for. Are there specific trainers or owners who do better at Keeneland than they do, say, at other tracks? Tom?
Well, I don't know about that. There are some here that really excel here.
Mm-hmm.
Like they plan their years around, or their year mainly around the spring and fall meets here. A few of them are local. A few of them will ship in from Florida and New York. So, but there's also a good mix of local trainers and horsemen here that really, win their share of races too. So,
what about international? I mean, you mentioned here within the states, but does this event attract international talent?
That kind of fluctuate kind of on a year-to-year basis. I mean, I think in general, I don't think there's a ton of international horses that come over, and that's not exclusive to Keeneland. That's kind of that you can say the same thing about many of the meets going on right now, especially because the European season is different than ours in that they don't really get started with their flat racing season. What we know is the flat racing season here until later on. They do what they call their steeplechase race and their hurdle season a lot earlier in the year. So their horses that would be considered like Derby horses, they're 3-year-olds. They get a little bit of a later start than our horses do here.
Well, Keeneland's spring meet is once seen as a warm-up for the Kentucky Derby, especially the Bluegrass Stakes. Once featured numerous horses that went on to win the Derby. Is this still a place where Derby contenders can still be seen? Tom, I'll ask you that first.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think the last horse that won the Bluegrass that went on to win the Kentucky Derby was Strike the Gold in 1991. So that's 20 years now. There have been horses that have run in the Bluegrass and run well in the Bluegrass that have come out of it and won the Kentucky Derby. I think the last one was Street Sense in, what year was that, Alicia? 07? 07. But it's really not about the racing surface. Some people would say that it's mainly because Keeneland went to a synthetic surface in 2005, I think, or 6. And yes, that has impacted the type of horses that run in the Bluegrass. But the reality is that for the 15 years before they switched over to synthetic, there was still only the one horse that had come out of the Bluegrass to win the Derby. So I'm really not sure if that's really the factor or if it's just the way the race is positioned before the Derby. It's only 3 weeks before the Derby. So
Right, and there's a certain amount of time that thoroughbreds, the optimum time that thoroughbreds should rest between races. That's what I was reading, Alicia.
And I think, too, we've seen a trend in recent years where there are certain trainers, especially top trainers, who like to give their horses more time, whereas years ago the idea of only having 2 preps leading up to the Derby was kind of considered a bad thing, and now we've had a string of Derby winners who have all had 2 preps, and we had Super Favorite last year, Mind That Bird, so it's kind of become the trendy thing, and a lot of top trainers, Todd Pletcher being one of them, he's a trainer who's very much in giving his horse as much time as he can. So I think, as Tom mentioned, the timing of the race too, in addition to the synthetic surface, the fact that it's only 3 weeks out, I think there's a lot of trainers who would prefer to rather have that 5 weeks as they may get with running in the Florida Derby, have that 4 weeks as they may get running this weekend in the Wood Memorial or the Santa Anita Derby. So I think that too has also kind of hindered the Bluegrass Stakes in recent years.
And with all those things in play, what Kentucky bred horses should we be looking for toward the Derby?
Pretty much most of the horses, the top horses on the trail are Kentucky bred horses, including Uncle Mo, who's the reigning juvenile champion. He's undefeated. He's going to be running tomorrow in the Wood Memorial for his final prep, dialed in as a Kentucky bred. Pretty much most of them are Kentucky breds.
Most of them are. And a few years ago, we had a Pennsylvania bred win the Kentucky Derby, Smarty Jones.
Right.
We had a New York bred win in 2003. The horses weren't bred in Kentucky, but the mares were bred to Kentucky stallions, and the mares foaled in those respective states. So even though they weren't Kentucky breds, there's always that kind of a link to Kentucky. So
we're talking to Tom Lamar of Blood Horse Magazine and Alicia Hughes of the Lexington Herald Leader newspaper. I'm Keith Neisler. This is Eastern Standard live from Keeneland Racetrack, and we were talking about the Polytrack just a bit ago, about the course itself. We know it was kind of controversial when it came in back in 2005, but it's been 6 years. Has there been an acceptance of this at other courses, or does Keeneland stand out by itself with this? Tom?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. It started out really, really popular, and I think the research in recent years has shown that it has led to a reduction of racing-related injuries. But changes like that, it's really hard to affect change like that in the racing industry. There are still a lot of people who want to run on dirt. I think it works here in particular because the meets are short, and trainers and owners like to come here and train and race in the spring and fall. And, you can run a good synthetic horse on the synthetic. The horse will run well on the turf, but these horses also run well on the dirt. I think it works here mainly because of the length of the meets.
Okay. And,
we don't hear any complaints about the surface here anymore. The first couple years we did, because it actually requires a lot more maintenance than we were led to believe, but it looks like they have it pretty well under control now. And it's a fair track and it's a safe track, and there's really not a whole lot more than that you can ask for. So,
Alicia, do you have something else to add to that?
I mean, just adding on to what Tom already touched upon. I think this is, of the synthetic surface, this is probably regarded as one of the better ones. There have been tracks, prominent tracks that have had synthetic surfaces, notably out in Santa Anita in California, where they had, it was not poly track that they had here. It was a different type of synthetic that they had down there, and they had all kinds of issues with it, where the base was not installed properly, thus they had drainage problems, and they basically have now ended up tearing up their synthetic track and going back to the dirt track that they had. And I know there's some trainers out there who have been very vocal on both sides of it. There's trainers like Bob Baffert who love the dirt and is thrilled to have it back, and there's other trainers out there who will still swear by that their horses train better and run better on synthetic. So I think it's still an issue that is very polarizing, and if you talk to a number of people on the backstretch, you will get probably a wide and varied opinions of those who love it and those who still hate it.
Well, we're going to go from the quality of the track to the quality of the competition. Some people have observed in the last several years is that the quality of competition at Keeneland, Turfway, and Churchill is slipping. Is that true? And if so, is it the result of smaller purses?
Well, the quality hasn't slipped as much as you might think. I think there are certain times of the year, the fall meets at Keeneland and Churchill are still extremely strong. Now, for some reason, the spring meets at Keeneland and Churchill, except for the Derby week at Churchill Downs, have not been as strong. That is because, horses are racing elsewhere. Mm-hmm. They probably would anyway, but still, like last year, Monmouth Park had a super meet. They offered about $800,000 in purses a day. So obviously, a lot of horses went there. That's not going to be the case this year. So I think the fall is stronger in Kentucky. Turfway Park is another situation. The quality is down because the horse population is down because the money's just not there anymore. There's nothing that $5 or $6 million would probably help Turfway tremendously. But it's just not there.
Yeah, we'll be talking with Bob Elliston in just a little bit.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is a challenge, especially, as Tom said, for the Turfway horsemen. I said, when you're only running 3 days a week, these horsemen, these trainers, they have to go somewhere. They have to be able to make their money and to generate, the revenue for their owners to justify the expenses. So, like Tom said, a lot of these guys are starting to turn elsewhere, and especially when you have some neighboring tracks, maybe in other states, that do have slots-fueled purses, right. That's going to draw them in, because it's like, why should I run for $5,000 when I can run for $20,000 an hour away?
And that said, too, the purses at Keeneland and Churchill are still very competitive with most other places. But I would say, having watched over the last few years, I think they're probably at the minimum level that they can be without really seeing some serious problems.
Okay, well, here's an idea to increase the size of the purse. Has been a proposed expansion of gambling at Kentucky tracks. For example, allowing slot machines as well. Is it something the horse industry has long sought, and what's the latest on that? Because we've been hearing it over the past few years. Alicia?
I mean, is it something that's been long sought after? Absolutely. Is it something that's going to happen anytime soon? I think the jury is still out on that, and we've been looking at that for a long time. I've talked, I personally, I'm not quite sure where I stand on the issue of expanded gaming, but I've talked to a number of people that I consider to be knowledgeable people in this industry who really feel they don't necessarily look at it as the silver bullet that's going to fix all the industry's problems, but I think the mindset right now is Kentucky needs to do something to sort of stop the bleeding. They need to get help so that they can stop losing these horses to other neighboring states, and I think that they look at potentially getting slots as something that would kind of be that tourniquet, that Band-Aid to kind of help that issue and give them time to figure out longer term solutions to this industry's problems.
And if they got their way, say we have a wish list and the tracks got their way and we do have expanded gambling here in Kentucky, what kind of plans would they do to make that happen, to make that materialize? Tom?
Well, we don't know at this particular point. There is still a chance that the tracks could install something called instant racing, which is like it's a pari-mutuel game. However, it looks like a slot machine, although it's not exactly a slot machine. It's pari-mutuel in nature. The Supreme Court is supposed to rule on that sometime this year, maybe this summer. If they get a favorable ruling, they may move ahead with something like that. I think that it would help the smaller tracks for the most part, because like I had said earlier, you only need another $5 or $6 million in the purse account at these smaller tracks, and and you're pretty well back in the ball game. It's not, the end all, but it's a pretty good start. I know that some of the tracks have prepared plans for what could happen with slot machines, but there's a lot of questions. How do you spend the money? Will the money, what will you use the money for? Just purses? Will you use it for marketing? Will you use it for the workers on the backstretch? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered before that even moves forward. And then, of course, you have, the real issue here is politics. It's whether or not it can move forward politically. It's
Right.
really not a moral issue, and it's really not a public policy issue. It's about politics.
Right. That's it. That's exactly right. Alicia, anything else to add to that?
I said I think Tom did a good job of covering it, but I mean, you're asking about, where would it kind of be? I mean, there's, I don't think people need to have concerns that they're going to come into Keeneland and see a giant slot machine. That's never going to happen. That's not happening here. I think if that day does come, that they are going to be very careful and very well thought out on where they do place these types of casino gambling, so that they're not kind of, wrecking sort of the atmosphere here that it is so well known for.
As we wrap up this particular segment, I want you each to answer this question. Let's look 5 years down the road, and we're here in 5 years at Keeneland at the opening of a spring meet. What are we going to be seeing? And I will start with you, Tom. What will we see?
Ooh, boy, that is a loaded question, too. Number one, I think the place will still be here and have a spring meet in 5 years. I think you'll see a lot more use of computer technology, wagering through smartphones and all that kind of stuff. I don't know about revenue from slot machines in
Right.
5 years, but I think there may be some revenue from something like an instant racing. And I think that there will be some legislative changes in the next couple of years that maybe will put a little bit more money back into the horse industry. But I do think that this place, yes, will still be here in spring 5 years from now. So.
Yeah, Keeneland is not going anywhere. It's too much of an institution, and it still has to. I mean, it is a boutique meet. It's a very high quality meet. It is very revered by the horsemen, by everybody involved in this industry. This is a very prestigious meet that a lot of people point to. So yes, it will still be here. I would venture to say we will probably still see a synthetic surface. They have invested a lot into this surface and put a lot of money behind it, so I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. Unless something horribly drastic changes with people's ideas about it. But and again, Tom mentioned the technology. Keeneland has been very good with not only being a track that carries on its traditions, but also being at the forefront of a lot of advances with technology, with Trackus and the fast bets that they're looking at instituting. So I think that they recognize that and they have embraced it. I think we will see a lot more of that come the future.
Alicia Hughes is a turf writer for the Lexington Herald Leader newspaper, and Tom Lamara covers racing for the Blood Horse magazine. Alicia and Tom, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
Coming to you from Keeneland Racetrack in Lexington, Kentucky, this is Eastern Standard. From Keeneland Racecourse in Lexington, Kentucky, this is Eastern Standard. I'm Keith Neisler. When compared to her sister tracks, Keeneland Racecourse is a youngster. Racing began here during the Great Depression. The first races were run at Churchill Downs in 1875. Racing began at Latonia Racecourse, which evolved into Turfway in 1883. In large part, these three tracks have defined Kentucky, giving the Commonwealth a deep horse racing tradition. With us this afternoon to discuss that tradition and the challenges facing the industry are the heads of those three tracks. Nearly 2 years ago, Kevin Flanery became president of Churchill Downs Racetrack. Bob Elliston has been president of Turfway Park since 1999. And our host for this afternoon, Nick Nicholson, has been president and chief executive officer at Keeneland since 2000. Gentlemen, welcome to Eastern Standard.
Welcome to Keeneland.
Thank you so much for allowing us to come here on this first day. And since our host is here, Nick, I'd like to ask a question. What defines Keeneland? What makes Keeneland Keeneland? If we're looking at this first day of the spring meet, what draws all these people here?
Gosh, Keith, that's a great question. I think that it is an overall package. I don't think it's one thing. If you look around at this crowd, you walk around today, you'll see a very diverse crowd. There's some of everything here. And there's a lot of different ways to enjoy this day. You can, where we are right here, it's called Brats and Brew. It's a great place for a brat and a brew. And if you want shrimp and white tablecloths, we've got that. So there's something for everyone. But I think that from the very beginning in the 1930s, the founders of Keeneland recognized the racetrack in Lexington had gone bankrupt. And so we were without a key part of our heritage here. And they decided, even though it was the Depression and times were hard, not to just open up another racetrack and make it better when times got better. But they said, let's build a race course that will rival the great race courses of the world. So they shot high. And they also said, we can't do this alone. We've got to have what they called the good graces of the community. And so from day one, Keeneland has been a partnership with the entire community of Central Kentucky and then all of our extended family, both across Kentucky and then across the country. People are here from all over the world today. And I think it's that partnership and that recipe of mix that are the key things.
And Kevin, if I was to ask you the same question, what makes Churchill Downs Churchill Downs?
Well, thank you, Keith. And, it's interesting listening to Nick because a lot of what he was saying resonates with Churchill Downs as well. Obviously, we're known as the home of the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks, 137 years strong this year. But it really is a part of the overall community, not just Louisville, but Kentucky. When people think of Kentucky all over the world, they think of the Kentucky Derby, they think of the Twin Spires. So we're much more than just what's happening today. We're about the many years before and sort of how we've gotten to this spot. Churchill Downs was in very similar condition to the Lexington racetrack that went bankrupt before Keeneland opened. Little known by some folks is that before Colonel Matt Wynn took over the track, the track had never turned a profit. But what he did was focus on making sure that when people were at the track, they had fun, they had a good time. And he did that by focusing on the Derby, focusing on one race, making it special across the country. So I think when you think of Churchill, I always say, whatever party you want, we can throw. We can put you a blanket in the infield, or we can let you dine with the Queen. That's what it's about, giving people options, opportunities, and understanding that you're a part of a bigger process and a bigger part of the community.
I'll go ahead and ask that question of you. Turfway, what's its mission? What makes it Turfway? It's been around for a long time.
Well, having listened to Nick and Kevin talk about how at their origins the places were broke, we fit right in there. We actually in the Great Depression, the old Latonia racetrack goes back into the late 1800s at a different location, but as part of that free fall that the American economy had in the 30s, it went belly up as well. And it was resurrected in the 50s, late 50 and 59 actually. So last year was 2 years ago was our 50th anniversary. Oh, by the way, Nick, 75-year anniversary. Congratulations. I forgot about that. But we all started in humble beginnings. And Turfway is kind of the connectivity to incredible things that happen here at Keeneland and the Kentucky Derby. We're kind of the blue-collar part of the circuit that makes Kentucky so important. We run typically in the winter, but the same kinds of things that Kevin and Nick talked about, pageantry, tradition, fun with racing at its core. That's what makes Turfway Park, and I think that's what makes Kentucky racing. And sometimes, we have to unfortunately talk about being under siege by other states that want what we have, and we'll probably talk some more about that. But at its core, Kentucky has so many possibilities and such a grand tradition.
We talk about traditions, but we also have to talk about turning a profit because this is a business. Where do you draw the line where you have to say, you know what, tradition is great, but I have to look ahead. I have to look, especially as the head. Bob, since you ended, I'll let him get first track at it.
Well, I think the tradition and the pageantry of racing sells. I think that's in demand by people. You go Derby week to Churchill Downs, and it's an incredible feeling. This is Augusta National for where we're sitting here today. Ironically, the Masters is going on. They're celebrating their 75th anniversary. But this tradition and this pageantry is core to what people have in demand in Lexington, Kentucky. We try to emulate that where we can, but at our core, we've got to find other ways to drive revenue. We've got to make it fun. We have to make it contemporary. You can't just rest on your past. You got to build on that. And I hear people talking about we all stand on the shoulders of great men, tall men and women, and that's what we do. And so we're trying to build on that Kentucky tradition with excitement and fun in an urban marketplace like Cincinnati. But I sure love coming down here and seeing these limestone walls and the feeling around here.
Well, Nick, let's talk about it. 75 years, congratulations for Keeneland. but it's a tradition, but the turning a profit. Where do you draw the line? How do you balance that?
Well, first of all, I was thinking, listening to Kevin, we're Johnny-come-latelys. They were there and Kentucky's hallmark a long time before we got started. I think what you have to do is stay in touch with your patrons, and you have to be true to who you are, be true to the core of the business. You have to be responsible financially. If you want to continue to be around, none of these businesses or any other business, if it doesn't pay attention, even this or university, the Doug Whitlock faces the same challenges, or Gary Abney, as chairman of the board of Eastern, faces. You have to keep your eye on what you're trying to accomplish, and yet you have to do it in a way that that makes sense from a business standpoint as well. So it's a tough line, and it's certainly a key part of all of the three of our jobs, or any other executive, I think.
Kevin?
I get this question a lot, and really it's about obligation. When I think about the 137 years of tradition at Churchill Downs, it's much more important to the community than I think people realize. So when you talk about fiscal responsibility, you're really talking about protecting the tradition by being fiscally responsible. You're talking about protecting the jobs that are connected, not just at the racetrack, but the farms. I mean, the breeding industry in Kentucky is a treasure. I tell people all the time, those farms that you drive by and you love to see, it's so beautiful and it's free to drive by. Well, it's really not free. It's part of the fabric of this industry. It employs so many people, from the people shoeing the horses to the best equine lawyers in the world to the best accountants in this field. So when I look at the issue of being fiscally responsible, I start with the obligation to protect the tradition. And if you're not fiscally responsible, then you're not meeting that obligation.
And yeah, go ahead.
I really like what Kevin just said. Our jobs are bigger than we are, aren't they? And the responsibility of providing these wonderful institutions that we're blessed with to future generations is a key part of our job description. And I think that's very well said. There's not a Kentuckian anywhere that doesn't stop and pause and proud to be a Kentuckian the moment that those horses come on the track for the Kentucky Derby. And it's essential to the very character of what it means to be a Kentuckian, that Kentucky Derby survives and prospers forever and ever. We're all in that boat together.
Well, we know that you appeal to, as you pointed out early on, Nick, both local and international, as far as I'm sure all of your establishments do that. Has the client changed over the past number of years? Kevin, I'll ask you, the people who come to Churchill Downs, have they changed? If so, how?
I actually would answer that question maybe surprisingly and say no.
Okay.
The customer's the same. They want to have fun. They want to have a good time. And Nick, I think, started off with saying that when you look at Keeneland and the 75 years and what his obligation is, you have to look at your patrons and what they want. So start with the premise, no, their demands have not changed. They want to have a good time. Now, obviously, the world has changed. If you look around us, there are many more gaming opportunities. There are many more entertainment opportunities than there may have been 100 years ago. So we're in a much more competitive market than we have traditionally been, and the customer is more sophisticated to that. The customer understands that it's discretionary money. They can spend it where they want. So again, it comes back to being up to us to recognize the customer, the core demand is the same. They want to have a good time. The competition is what has changed.
Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I would just add, while the those things that make their experience what they want great food, they want to have a nice clean environment, they want to be treated great. We all go about that the same way. But the customer is a little more finicky. It's an on-demand customer. They want the delivery of that product through different means these days. It's not just the experience that they have here on track. And as a matter of fact, I think sometimes in our industry we think too much or think too little about this experience, bringing folks back to touching and feeling and hearing and smelling the entertainment that we provide, but they want it on the internet, they want it on the telephone, they want it on their television, they want it on their smartphone, and we've got to adapt. So the racing industry has to adapt to those changing demands, but at their core, Kevin's dead right. It's entertainment, and it's a respite away from the mundane part of their day.
And we'll talk about the variety of competition that's come up in just a few minutes, but I want to give Nick a chance to talk about the experience, the client or the customer experience. We've heard from Kevin and Bob. We know they want to be entertained, and we know they want to have a good time, but we also, as Bob pointed out so adeptly, it's on demand. That has to change in some ways how you present the experience.
One of the challenges, I'll give it a little different answer.
Okay.
Everything they said is true, but there's a little different aspect here in that what we have to do is not unlike a Wrigley Field or Bob mentioned Augusta. We have to provide our patron here an old-fashioned experience. They want to look out over this beautiful pastoral setting, and they want this stone to look like it did, and they want these big trees. And it's a little old-fashioned and a little anachronistic in some ways, but it's a key part of what they expect us to be. And so what our trick is to, in some ways, stay old-fashioned, but at the same time, we have to provide them modern experiences, modern facilities, modern technology, television program that is as good as we can make it, signal that is good. And so what we're trying to do here is balance of being old-fashioned, but from a technology standpoint and experience standpoint, letting the patron be as comfortable as they are at any other major league sport.
Kevin, during the last 2 years, Churchill Downs has experimented with night racing and had good success, I believe, last year. How did it, give us the upfront, how did it go for Churchill with that, and do you intend to continue it, and does it cause any sort of traditions to suffer?
Actually, it's funny, when Nick was talking, he mentioned Wrigley Field, and the minute he said that, I thought of the fact that we've installed lights, and that was one of the great, questions for Wrigley Field, would you have nighttime baseball? We've been tremendously successful with introducing the Downs After Dark. That's what we call those nights over the last 2 years. We actually used temporary lights the first year just to gauge what the demand was, what the customer wanted, would they find it entertaining, and overwhelmingly they've embraced it. We're averaging 27,000, 28,000 a night. I think we've had as many as 33,000 in one of those night racing events, and it really is a mix of horse racing, entertainment, fashion, good food, all the things Bob talked about a minute ago. So we actually have made the decision to limit the number of times we turn on the lights. We want it to be special. We want it to be an event when those lights come on. This year, for the first time, our opening day, April 30th, will be under the lights. Just like you see in other sports. Opening night in baseball, opening day of the football season, those are big events. We're going to use the lights to really sort of showcase the best of what we have and really kick off Derby Week with something spectacular.
Bob, we can go to Turfway with this winter. You had Saturday evening racing, right?
Yeah, we actually have been doing night racing for quite a while, so I'm glad that the folks at Churchill figured out, that we actually were doing something pretty smart. I'm kidding. I've stolen so many things from other competitors, or not competitors, from other friends. I don't know that I've had an original thought in some time, but we have to provide entertainment when other folks are looking for that entertainment. It's difficult in Greater Cincinnati and that big community to put a competitive product out there on a Thursday afternoon. There's a lot of folks, the folks we're relying on, new fans, people who don't typically come to the track but are looking for entertainment options. We've got to put the product out there when they're looking for it. And so we, like Kevin is talking about, have crafted our Friday nights and our Saturday nights now as date nights, as family nights, as times to come out and experience a broad range of entertainment. But at its core, what we have that nobody else has is horse racing. And who doesn't love that? And you couple that with good music, good fun, great food, great service, and it's been very beneficial for us at Turfway Park.
I'm Keith Neisler, and you're listening to Eastern Standard. I'm talking with Nick Nicholson of Keeneland, Bob Elliston of Turfway, and Kevin Flanery of Churchill Downs. We'll come back in just a moment, and we'll start to talk about the competition, expanded gambling, and the like, live from Keeneland Racecourse in Lexington, Kentucky. This is Eastern Standard. From Keeneland Racecourse in Lexington, Kentucky, this is Eastern Standard. I'm your host, Keith Neisler, and I'm joined today on this opening day at Keeneland Racecourse, a beautiful day. And if you want to look at it through our video stream, you can on our website, as well as at Keeneland's website, and Churchill Downs are also carrying that. And you can also find it on Twitter and Facebook and a variety of places, or you can come on down. We'd love to say hello to you. Nick, I said going out in this last break that we were going to talk about the challenges and the competition that's coming in, especially when it comes to expanded gambling in states outside of Kentucky, and the apparent reticence politically to move forward with expanded gambling in the Commonwealth. As a person who is the president of a racetrack, how do you view this? How do you view this situation that's currently about?
Well, it's a very complicated situation that does not lend itself well to 10-second sound bites unless you're just trying to politically pontificate. If you really look at the issue, you asked me what I think. If it were up to me and I could wave a magic wand, there wouldn't be any of the expanded gaming around us. If people want to go to Vegas, let them go to Vegas. But the reality is that many other states, for their various reasons, have chosen not to do that. And they've also chosen to use thoroughbred racing and other horse racing as almost what I think is a Trojan horse to get established in their state. And they have supplemented money for horse racing in other states. And the sole reason, when you look at their advertising, it just stings me because their sole reason to do that is to attract horses from other states, primarily Kentucky. And it makes it, and it's like any other professional sport. It's hard to compete against the Yankees if you're in baseball. And the same thing's true in our sport, that horses will leave the Kentucky circuit and go to other circuits that are trying to build year-round racing. And they're so close to us. And many of these states have built casinos not across their own cities, but across Kentucky cities, and trying to get Kentucky dollars, and they've been successful to the tune of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So from our standpoint, we go to Frankfurt and say, this is what we're having to compete with, so allow us to do what other states are doing and allowing their industry to do, and let us compete, and we'll do what Indiana and Illinois and West Virginia and Ohio does, except we'll try and do it better. And because of politics and because of other things, and because it's in all honesty, I think, Keith, it should be fair to say, also because it's not just a horse issue. It's there's a society issues, and people don't want this in their town, and I think we have to understand that it's broader than just us. But when you're looking at it from our point of view, it makes it impossible. There's no way around the fact we can do what we do as well as we can do it, and we're not going to be able to compete, and that's the reality. The Kentucky racing circuit, the year-round racing circuit, is on life support right now, and I don't think it's going to survive, and I don't think at this stage there's anything that we can do to change that reality. And it's not a very pleasant thing. I don't enjoy saying that, but it's a reality. And these states are also going after our breeding industry that is so important economically to Kentucky. That will be slower. That'll be more long term. But the racing thing is right in front of us right now, and what these other states have done is working. And it's not something that we made. It's not something we wanted to bring up. It's not something that we started, but it's something that we're involved in that we just don't have any choice about.
It sounds to me like a level playing field is what just putting all that in a complex issue into something simple. Nick mentioned the Indiana and Ohio. Well, you guys happen to be close by there. Bob, in fact, right across the river. You've been dealing with the Indiana casinos, and Kevin will answer that. But give me your take.
Well, Nick's right. I think if we had our druthers, we would prefer to be this kind of gaming only, and the kind of gaming that we're talking about, casino gaming, would have stayed in Vegas and stayed in Atlantic City, but that's not the case. States permitted that kind of investment. You got to give the people what they want, and the people seem to be wanting that kind of product. I can tell you from a competitor standpoint, I've said this before, it sounds kind of flippant, but I feel in sometimes that I'm going to a gunfight with a knife right now, because these casinos, these facilities are so humongous. They have all the amenities. They're brand new. They're privately funded typically, so folks are investing their own dollars, employing their people in those communities, and then they're first-class entertainment. They're on par with publicly funded stadiums like the Bengals or the Reds, and here we are kind of scraping by, and so we aren't able to invest in our product. We're not investing in the horses, so these other states are attracting our best quality horses, and we're not able to invest in the physical space, and that's the difference. So give us a level playing field. That's exactly the words we've always used. Let us invest our own money. We're not looking for a handout. We're not looking for a tax break. On the contrary, we're looking to give the state needed revenues to fund important projects like education. But at its core, let us compete mano a mano with the casinos, and we think we got a great shot because we got horses as well.
Kevin?
Well, I think Bob ended with the key component. We have horses as well. It's the casino that we compete against is aptly named Horseshoe. I don't think that's an accident. They recognize that they're right across the river from Louisville, a huge racing town right across the river from the home of the Kentucky Derby, and they're coming after our customers. They're coming after people who live in Kentucky to wager there, and that's smart. That's what they're doing. We would just like to be able to offer those same products here. Really, this is a much bigger question than just are you going to have expanded gaming at the racetracks. The question is Kentucky's signature industry, the thoroughbred industry, important enough to save? The 100,000 jobs that are related to the industry, the $4 billion economic impact it has on the state, that's what's at stake. That's what's at risk. And we're seeing it. I can tell you that we're seeing trainers making the decision to leave the barns of Keeneland, the barns of Turfway, the barns of Churchill Downs, the barns of Kentucky, to go to those horse states that we know so well, like Delaware, Pennsylvania. Those are real impacts. Those are families selling their houses and moving out of state. Those are jobs disappearing. To me, that's the core issue. The level playing field allows us to protect what the entire world knows about Kentucky and knows about us in a positive way.
When I was talking to Tom Lamara a little earlier in the show, he also brought up the point that one of the effects that we're seeing is the effect on purses for races. Do the casinos and those other entities, competitive entities, do they have a direct impact on those sort of things?
Oh, yeah.
Either one.
I'll start it off, and I'm sure Bob will chime in. Absolutely, they have an impact. I mean, the way purses are funded is by the money that's wagered at the racetrack in Kentucky. In these other states, they have the benefit of the money wagered on the races, but they also have supplemented money from the casino. So that is allowing them to raise the level of their purses. And it's just like any other business. You can't point at the trainers, the owners, the horsemen, and blame them when they can race across the river in Indiana, over in West Virginia, for double the amount of money. They've got to be successful as well. They have people that they're responsible to. So it's a pure economic decision for them. And I have to say this. Our trainers, the trainers based in Kentucky, have held on and held on and held on and tried not to do that. But there comes a point at which you just have to face the fact that you got to keep the lights on. Same is true for them as it is for the tracks.
Bob?
Yeah, I would. Kevin alluded to it, but we've made our inactivity has permitted these great racing states like Delaware and Pennsylvania, I say with tongue firmly planted in cheek, to give out more money than we are. Think about that for a minute. Pennsylvania, at Penn National, Philly Park, Presque Isle, they're giving more annual purses away than Kentucky. West Virginia was nothing. And I don't mean to be disparaging, but West Virginia was on life support. Those tracks were getting ready to close, and now they're giving out more money than Kentucky is. That's what's so frustrating about this issue is, look where we already start. We were the world's best, not just the country's best. Kentucky racing was the world's most acclaimed, most wanted, and we've permitted ourselves to be, quite frankly, other than Derby Week and Keeneland, we're kind of mediocre anymore, and it's all about the purses because purses drive quality. And to bring those best horses back here, we've still got a great opportunity. And really all we're asking for is let the people make that determination.
Speaking of letting the people make the determination, have we seen outside influences trying to make sure that the opportunity for a level playing field being in Kentucky with expanded gaming? Have we seen evidence of something like that? Have you looked at it from people who may not necessarily want expanded gambling in Kentucky, putting forth dollars in realms to make sure that the wrong message gets out?
I don't know that I can honestly put my finger on this company that has that kind of influence in our communities right now is spending money on that. I think you don't know that because of the disclosure issues. Clearly, as Nick said earlier, there are casinos in greater Cincinnati on the Indiana side and soon to be on the Cincinnati side that are drawing Kentuckians from northern Kentucky to play their product. There's a reason why the Horseshoe facility down near Kevin is located where it is. They passed law in Indiana, but the population center is truly on the Kentucky side. So this is happening along our borders, and those folks have a stake at not seeing us to get to that level playing field we've talked about. I don't really believe that there's anything nefarious or anything like that going on, but they have an economic reason to continue to pursue those markets by themselves.
Sure.
Well, Bob closed with it. I mean, I can't tell you who's spending money where. I can tell you that in Ohio, when the racetracks tried to have gaming passed for the racetracks, that it was like $36 million was spent in opposition to that by the casinos. Now, again, they're trying to protect their business, but the reality is their business is really in Kentucky because the vast majority of their patrons are from Kentucky. What we think is Kentucky should enjoy the fruits of that, and we should be able to allow that to happen. They have a vested interest, and it's probably best for them that we don't have it, but for Kentucky, it's better that we just level the playing field.
With all that being said, and the situation as it is right now, what significant changes would we see on the horizon to help you continue to move forward with that? Kevin or Bob, which one wants to?
Before Bob, and I'll let Bob answer, but
Sure.
Before Bob answers, I do want to say one thing. This isn't hypothetical that This will impact our industry. All of the racetracks in Kentucky have already eliminated race dates, I believe. Keeneland may not have. We've eliminated Wednesdays because we don't have enough horses to fill the races. They've gone to West Virginia, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. What that means is I've had to tell staff, you're not working on Wednesday and you're not getting paid. So it's not a hypothetical situation, it's real.
Yeah, no question about that. These aren't what ifs, these aren't speculation, both in terms of the consequences that the horse industry's faced, but the converse of that is the communities that have done this in Indiana, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, soon to be, they've flourished. I mean, nothing, we talk about these mythical concerns that happen in our community, bankruptcies and other kind of negative influence. They simply haven't happened in those communities. And so what has happened is their revenue streams have been driven way up to fund purses at the racetrack, but also to fund new school systems, new sewer treatment plants, things like that these communities are in desperate need for. So Kevin's dead right. This isn't speculation. This is real world. It's happening. We can put our fingers on this.
Okay, speaking of real world, since we're about to end the show for today, I just need a short answer. Kevin, are you optimistic about the future of horse racing in Kentucky?
I am. I think that all of us are not standing still with horse racing. It will look dramatically different, and I say it from the perspective of Churchill Downs. Mm-hmm. I think that we're trying to do a lot of things to make sure that when we run, it's something special. What I'm not optimistic about is the year-long racing circuit and the thoroughbred industry for Kentucky if we don't change some things.
Okay, Bob?
Well, I guess my optimism comes from my passion. I wake up every single day, and I can't wait to get to work. And I think Kevin probably feels the same way. We're both Kentuckians. We were raised here. This is what we feel. This is what we experience. And so maybe I think a little bit too much with my heart than my head, because my head might tell me if we don't see some assistance soon. And when I say assistance, I mean just let us get on that level playing field. Let us invest our monies. Then Kevin's right. I think what is great about Kentucky racing will be much smaller. We'll have Derby. We'll have Keeneland. After that, it gets a little murky. But I tell you what, I don't want to think about it because I can't wait to get to work every day.
We've been speaking to Bob Elliston, president of Turfway Park, Kevin Flanery, who's president at Churchill Downs, and we spoke with Nick Nicholson, our host and president at Keeneland. Gentlemen, thanks for coming to Eastern Standard.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Our thanks also to turf writers Alicia Hughes of the Lexington Herald Leader newspaper and Tom Lamar of the Blood Horse magazine. We also had help today from sound engineers Roger Duvall, Bill Browning, and Jonice Franklin. Our webcast was produced by Leonard Nave, Dwayne Bolin, and Charles Huff of EKU Media. We also thank EKU President Doug Whitlock, and our thanks goes to Julie Baylog and her communications staff at Keeneland. Charles Compton is our executive producer, Michael Jonathan, the theme writer. Thanks to our partner stations, WKMS in Murray and WFPL in Louisville. For WEKU, I'm Keith Neisler. Have a great day.
The opinions expressed on Eastern Standard by our guests belong to them alone and do not necessarily represent the attitudes of WEKU and Eastern Kentucky University.